You're going to cry about it? Are you going to complain about it? You're going to, much more to the point, you're going to give up? Everybody, welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Bill Whittle with my friend Alfonso Rachel, and he's not just my colleague, he is my friend. Just before we started rolling today, I had a little chat with Zoe about some personal setbacks and in things, and we often talk about this kind of thing both before and after the shows, and sometimes without the shows. I get a lot of great insight from Zoe, and in this particular case, what we were talking about was this idea of this kind of hurt you get after a setback where you were counting on somebody, or you were expecting something that seemed not only reasonable but agreed to, and then it just falls through, or whatever the case may be. We see setbacks obviously on the political scene pretty much every day, with things that just are like, my God, honestly. I saw Senator Cruz I saw a clip of Senator Cruz addressing the assistant director of the FBI, saying, do you in fact have 17 recordings of an informant saying that Joe Biden took a $5 million bribe? And the assistant director of the FBI said, I'm not going to get into that with you, Senator. I thought, that's interesting. Would be nice to throw some contempt of Congress charges at this guy, but why don't we do that? Well, I guess it's because we don't have control of the Senate and the House. That's why, or at least the Senate. And all of these sense of setbacks, and all of these sense of, you get your pride wounded, and you get filled with, it's kind of despair. But Zoe, you said something that I thought was really interesting, and that was, that this is a result of expectations. And expectations are the enemy of just about everything. And I realized something deeper about that, and that's why I wanted to talk about this topic on the show, because I realized that when you put your faith in other people, not for them to do your job for you so much, but when you are planning on things that on help that you end up not getting, whatever the case may be, and you feel this really stung and kind of hopeless kind of thing. And I realized it's a form of abdication, and obviously we know the term abdication in terms of like abdicating the crown, but the second definition I really liked a lot. It said it's the failure to fulfill a responsibility or duty. And I think what I realized out of this is that when you have this kind of setbacks, and God knows you and I have had just a whole string of them, and there are many times when I want to say, God, I know suffering builds character. I think I've got enough character. But it's what it is it's a result of abdication on my part. It's not accepting full responsibility, or failure to fulfill a responsibility or a duty. You and I both feel responsibility and duty to spread the truth, and to weather whatever storms may come our way. This is not a particularly lucrative business in this side of the aisle. If we were to both turn our coats and be former conservatives who came to see the light, I'm sure we've been making a lot more money. But it's not about the money even. It's this realization I had from speaking with you, that this sense of kind of, disappointment and hurt is because I had abdicated the responsibility and duty for getting these messages out there by depending on other people to do certain aspects of this, when in point of fact, that should be considered a luxury rather than something to base the entire strategy on.
Man, I hate having to depend on other people. I hate it. But I mean, because here's the thing, man. The caveat to that is there needs to be some cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna get things done, man, we need to be able to cooperate. And I guess that's a whole different kind of dependency, or being dependable. Or
Mm-hmm.
being able to depend on other people. That's a whole rather than a kind of like codependency to get things done. But being if we invest this kind of faith in other people, man, hey, people gonna let you down. That's just the way it is. That's our nature. Even if we don't mean to, we are going to let each other down. Now, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to treat each other with like a sense of prejudice where you can't trust in anybody. But that kind of faith, that faith is only worthy of the Lord himself. And that's what you want to preface these things going in. So you have the constitution to be able to get through where men will fail each other. The Lord tells us, look, man, we're supposed to love one another. And with that is going to involve trust. I need you to stay trusting. Don't be consumed by the gun shyness of man. People let me down and things like that. God's like, no, man, keep going. I need you to maintain your level of trust, but that investment of trust goes into me, and that gives you the constitution to be able to react with other people without being, standoffish or unapproachable or anything like that. You could still mobilize with integrity, regardless of failures and things like that, because failures are going to happen. But as the saying, what's that saying goes, man? Success is repeated failures without losing enthusiasm. You gotta draw on something more strong than yourself to be able to maintain that enthusiasm and keep on going.
Yeah, that's the thing I found myself with after the sting of this thing started to fade. I found myself thinking, well, it's up to you again. And there's a kind of liberation in that, it's like, yes, it's, that's just more work that I have to do and more, just more effort. And I'm feeling pretty overextended as it is, but at least then you feel like, okay, well, the one person I know is going to basically going to not let me down is me, unless, of course, I could let myself down, but at least I have control over that decision. That my actions are the only thing in the world that I really have control over in terms of interpersonal relationships. I can't control anything that happens on the other side of a relationship directly. I can try to be worthy of, respect or love or gratitude or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, I'm not in control of those of the other party's actions or feelings. But I am in control of mine. So I found it to be just really disappointing, and at the same time, kind of like a cattle prod. Like, okay, man, next, now what? And your comment about just keep finding the strength to go on. I don't know really what it is. There is I don't know if it's noble or just plain stupid, but I honestly don't. But I do know that you and I both talked about this. We both feel like we've been given an assignment, or maybe better to say that we've been selected for a certain purpose, and that selection is something you can turn down. But if you decide to accept it, it's not only high honor; it makes your life worthwhile. And you had pointed out before we started rolling here today that God has a plan that doesn't necessarily present itself as blindingly obvious to you, at any time in the process.
Indeed, man. And I know at these times, man, that may sound like really cliche to a lot of people. And it may sound cliche and even a cop out, to be able to cope with, your disappointments and stuff like that. Because a lot of people, they hear that in the Christianese. God has a plan for you and God has your season, the prosperity doctrine kind of things.
Yeah.
And I learned a long time ago, man, it ain't about me and it ain't about my plan. What I read in the Word of God, when I hold the Bible, I am holding the textual representation of the Lord himself. I am holding his word. And it ain't about me, and it's not looking for what my desires are or my ambitions are or anything like that. The objective of it is to see him in the scriptures and to be able to declare, I have seen him. So that is my job, to report. And I will find different mediums to be able to, whether it's through music or whether it's through teleplays or commentary or anything like that, to report what squares up with who he is and the truth according to him. So that is my directive. And it's just like you said, when it comes down to depending on yourself to be able to do these things, the Lord tells us, I want you to be self-controlled. I need you to be self-humbling. But even to do these things, it takes the fortification of him to be able, because our pride will get in the way of all that. That's a hard thing to move. you
It
know?
is.
So it's like, that's why we have to draw on him to be able to do these things. So when we're mobilized to carry out this stuff and we're thinking, okay, what's my purpose here? I don't feel like I'm accomplishing what I'm supposed to be able to accomplish. And matter of fact, I feel like I'm being flipping held back. Once again, let's remember, it ain't about us. And
That's the bottom line, dude.
it's
That's
not.
the bottom line.
Yeah, and here's the thing, but we feel like we're being held back. Well, the Lord himself, it's like, to us, we're arrows in his quiver. So when we feel like we're being held back, that is you, that is me, that's anybody else who feels like they're being held back, but they know that they've got a purpose and they've got something. Your purpose is to be an arrow in the Lord's quiver. And in order for him to fire that bow, he's got to what? Pull it back. Hold.
Yeah, and the arrow should not be deciding where to fly, right? I mean, that's the archer's job, is to point the arrow where it's supposed to go, and the arrow should have no say in that particular aspect.
That's it. So God is,
your job is just to fly straight and true and hit what you're being aimed at. It's not your choice to pick the targets or the time or any of that stuff.
Amen. That's it. And and the Lord's directive to us is to be fruitful. We do have something to do, and we will be fruitful in the passions that he's given us. If our passion is to promote the truth, and the Lord has given us creative propensities to be able to do it, he expects us to do it. But we're in his army, and you can't be the one who just decides, I'm going to go ahead and charge the enemy, and you'll probably end up getting yourself destroyed and other people destroyed when they depended on you to hold your position and wait for your orders. I mean, there's going to be times, we have the option, of course, to realize when we're supposed to mobilize, despite what the chain of command says. Only if you have that fortification from the Lord to have the discernment to do so. Because if not, you're going to be a liability to yourself and the rest of your compatriots. So it's one of those things to have the discipline and the focus to be able to trust in our general, to know how to mobilize us with the talent, the passion, the skills that he's given us. It's like, yeah, I know, man, you really want it. You want to get in the field, man. I understand. You want to get some. I know you want to get some. Hold on, man. just hold on. Keep yourself ready. Keep yourself ready. Keep yourself trained up. I will deploy you at the right time.
Yeah, put me in, coach. I'm 64 years old here.
Exactly.
I'm that, of course, see, even the arrogance of saying something like that, right? Just the self-centeredness of a statement like that. It's not like I've been sitting on the sidelines not doing anything. I mean, put me in. It's like I've been in this fight for over 20 years now, and doing more good than I realize sometimes. So that's another it's another expectation, right? Mm-hmm. This expectation of I have just these visions of things that are just so much more effective and wide ranging and all the rest of it. And I sometimes wonder why I'm just getting, I just can't get this thing out of the garage. And my wife has been here for almost 7 years now, and she'd never learned to drive before. She had lived in Russia, where there's public transportation anywhere, and furthermore, she'd been in 2 particularly bad accidents where the driver rear-ended another car, so she was pretty intimidated by the LA driving scene, and had been beating herself up for not driving for quite a while now. And then suddenly, 6 months ago, she just decided to go out, get pass the written test, and start taking driving lessons. And now she's pestering me every day. Can we drive some more? She drove us out to Oxnard and back just before I left, and that was a 100-mile round trip roughly. And every time, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I do this earlier? And I just keep saying, you weren't ready to do it earlier. You just, for whatever reason, it wasn't time. And then when it was time, here you go, and you're kicking its butt. You've gone from being terrified of this to not being able to get enough of it, and that only happened because of other things that had to get in line in order for it to happen. Don't don't beat yourself up for the time that it didn't happen. It took a lot of courage for you to go out there, get that written test in the face of some of the trauma you've been in, because that's the only word for it, And for those people who grew up driving as I did as a kid, and not only grew up driving, but grew up in cars. Most Americans grew up in our cars. The idea of being nervous about driving is just it's almost inconceivable. Because we spent our entire lives in cars, especially people of my generation. And to suddenly come to a world where you're facing these high speed freeways and and LA drivers and all the rest of it, it's hard to appreciate just how intimidating that can be. But she just found the courage to do it. When the moment came, she did it. And I should be giving myself some of the advice that I give to her, I think. I think she felt like she had abdicated a responsibility, a necessity in this town. I think she felt like she just plain abdicated the responsibility and the duty of learning to drive to get around Los Angeles, and was not treating herself very well about it. And now that once the moment came, the turnaround and the reversal was so astonishing and so fast. I should probably take some of my own advice on this one, I think.
I heard that, man. And when we think about going to applying that to feeling like, man, why is this taking so long, and why aren't we able to do what it is, and and the timing of it, and all these things, like you said, have been set in your way to keep you from doing what you're supposed to do. So, man, why couldn't I have been doing this earlier? The Lord Himself, man. We wonder, it's like, well, God, you know what it is that I want, and I'm asking for it. I thought I was supposed to get it. I mean, even Jesus Himself, asked God, say, hey, Pops, if there's any other way that we could do this, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's like, even Jesus didn't get what He wanted the way that He wanted it. But
exactly. Are we really married to this whole cross thing? I mean, is that like a deal breaker or something? But that's actually extremely comforting.
Yes,
to know
it is. I mean, but it's like, man, do we have to go through that? Even something, even like not even as close to that, but that's a lot of suffering that Jesus, like, hey, Pops, if this cup could pass me, that'd be really fantastic. Any other ways? But in God's way, thanks be to Him in the sacrifice that Jesus made, basically throwing Himself over a grenade for us, in that we have a chance for salvation. That is the bigger reward as far as Jesus goes, or even as far as Paul. And we wonder, it's like, man, why go through all that? Or like, take, for instance, Paul. Paul said, hey, God, man, I got this pain in my side, man. I got this thorn in my side. Can you do something about this? And it seems like God's answer is kind of cold-blooded to him. It's like, my grace is sufficient for you. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to have to deal with this thorn in my side. But in looking at it, you can see God's plan in it, because the thorn in Paul's side was actually called a message. It was sent as a message from the devil himself, right? That's what the thorn in the side was. And the thorn in Paul's side is the word is like skilopos. In Greek, it's like skilopos. And what it means is a sharp pain at the hip, and it's like a bifurcated. It's like a compound word. It's like what you can observe and a sharp pain in your side. That's what it means. So this sharp pain in Paul's side is reflective of the sharp pain at the hip that was given to Jacob by God Himself. And what that was that pain for Paul was an insignia to the Jews that, look, man, this pain that I have at my hip is reflective that the pain of that God Himself gave to Jacob. That's my insignia. And furthermore, it says that from there, that's where they were supposed to treat him with dignity and respect as one who came in the name of the Lord. So all that to say, Bill, that what was going through with Paul, what he had to sustain, and his prayer not being answered was useful for God, because that gave him legitimacy to the Jews who were becoming Christians, because they were seeing that. That was Paul being deployed to do that. It was a painful deployment, but in doing so, a lot of people got saved. And that's what we're supposed to be trying to do. Report. And we're going to find different ways to report. It doesn't always have to be about, we could do things on history. We could do things on things that have happened, like during certain wars and stuff like that. The objective, though, is to make sure that it is not something that is apart from God. We're not to take these things like I've done things for my own glory, Bill. It's like, this is what I want to do. And I want to be able to do this message and I want to do this, but it was all about me. It was all about my interest. And I didn't have God in mind with it. And in doing so, you cannot help but be a contributor to what's going on in the culture that's driving us crazy. It doesn't, like even the book of Esther doesn't even mention God. But the narrative itself is not apart from God. So that way we're not contributing to the decline of the culture. It could be anything. It could be science fiction. It could be any genre. It could be comedy. It could be music or whichever. But to take that and to not include God with it or just make it apart from God, then we're just basically agents of our own destruction.
Yeah. Again, thanks, man, because that really does help. And when I look at the pathology that affects not just our culture, but any late stage civilization, is it's just an excess of comfort, and people not only are maybe you could say too comfortable all the time, but their expectation of comfort and ease and so on, and this is cured by being uncomfortable, being made to experience discomfort, and then see what you're made of. You're gonna cry about it, you're gonna complain about it, you're gonna much more to the point, you're gonna give up. And the more I go through this experience, this life experience, the more I realize, I think, that ultimately, there's the only real test is not a test of your enthusiasm or your talent or your ability to raise money or any of those things. It really just comes down to how much do you believe in what you're doing to be able to continually get knocked down on your butt and then just say, well, I could either give it up or I can get back up again. And then it's like, I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment. But that's a self-serving expression too, because I know the things that I want to do are important, and that I believe in them completely. And I don't believe I put that belief there entirely myself. So I do like that analogy about the arrow not deciding where it's going to go. It's just my job's just to fly straight to what I'm aimed at, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, and I'll just keep continuing to do that until I'm not able to fly anymore, I guess.
And if I may interject, like really quick, Bill, and I would offer for folks, it's even more than believing in what you're doing. It's believing in the one who gave it to you to do.
That's what that's exactly right. So I just need to keep that in mind, and that's what I'll do. So actually, I'm considerably more cheerful than I was yesterday, and I'll be more cheerful, even more cheerful tomorrow. And I owe a lot of that to my friend Zoe, who not only provides me a lot of comfort, hopefully provides you a lot of insight and comfort as well. That's one of the main reasons why we do this show, and we do hear back from people. It doesn't have a huge following, but that's okay. The people that we hear from get something from this, and I hope you're one of those people. I sincerely do. For Alfonso, Rachel, I'm Bill Whittle, and we'll see you next time right here on The Virtue Signal.